Hello. Welcome back to Jordy's Book Report, the podcast, episode 2. If you missed episode 1, please check it out. Not that the episodes are connected in any way, but, you don't want to miss out on anything. I do have a different mic today, so I hope the sound is a little better. But before I get started, I must sing our intro. Stuck in a rut, read a book, don't like to read, take a look, and I'll read the book for you. Welcome back. I already said that. Well, this is Jordy's Book Report, the podcast, as you know, as I've said for the 20th time. And now that I've said that for the 20th time, I'm going to get into the context of today's episode. So in today's episode, I decided to read a classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. This book is a snooze fest, so if you've tried to read it before or even listened to it on Audible, well, I commend you for that effort. But it is hard to listen to. It is actually my second attempt, and I was able to finally finish it. Although my hack, if you're listening on Audible to this book, is to put it at speed 1.5 because the narrator does drone on. It is an older book, so maybe, people were used to things being more boring back in the day. Just kidding, don't get offended, anyone. I mean, I do remember it being a lot more slower paced, which was actually a nice thing, but now in today's fast-paced, ADHD-ridden world, we need things fast, and we need things now, and we need things entertaining, and we need to be entertained. So it's understandable that if you try to listen to a book that's so boring or read it, you're not really going to get that far into it. But that being said, this book has a lot of gold nuggets, and let me say that there's some statistics in here that you might find quite shocking about how important it is to be friendly with people and have good relationships with people in both business and your personal life. So one example of this, and I'm just going to say this right off the bat because they say this in the intro, is even in a technical field such as engineering, only about 15% of financial success is based on skill, and the other 85% is based on how well one gets along with people and one's ability to lead people. So these things are really, really important to know. Yes, we're getting down to business. Let's get down to business. And that's a Mulan reference in case, I know a lot of men for some reason have not seen Mulan. The real one. Not the real one, not the live action one, like the cartoon original Mushu, Eddie Murphy. This isn't about that though. Let's get back on track. So this book is pretty old, and these concepts are basically inspired by old philosophers and new psychology. But when they say new psychology, like I said, this book is pretty old, so who knows how new that psychology is. But being able to be a good leader and arouse enthusiasm in other people is a valuable skill. So this book is separated into parts, many, many parts, and I'm not going to obviously have enough time to cover everything because this book is like 10 hours to listen to on Audible. Yes, I listened to that for you in 5 days. It is 10 hours long, so it's a lot of stuff. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically brush over a lot of things that stuck out to me, and I am going to include those things in the show notes, in the description box, so that you can look it over in a PDF or Word document. Like I said, this book is divided into parts, and chapters restart for every part. So you're going to have part 1, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, part 2, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And let me preface with this. I know it sounds manipulative to say, let's learn how to win friends and influence people, but the lessons in here are teaching you to genuinely take interest in what people are saying, to genuinely put yourself in their shoes, basically, to understand where they're coming from and how they feel in order to better come to an understanding, which I actually don't think is a bad thing at all. And I'm going to get back into that, but it does stress that you want to keep a high moral standard and not do things in a manipulative or self-serving way, because that will come to bite you in the butt. Fundamental techniques in handling people. One thing that the author says is that if you want to gather honey, you don't kick over the beehive. And studies have shown, and this is an unrelated but related study that animals rewarded for good behavior will learn more quickly than an animal punished for bad behavior. And the same goes for humans. So when you're trying to teach a dog, for example, if you're punishing them all the time for their bad behavior rather than rewarding them for the behaviors you want them to continue, they're just not going to do the behaviors that you yell at them for in front of you. But they're also not going to do the good behaviors because for what? You're not rewarding them for them, right? So you have to really think about that when you're talking to people as well. You don't always want to be hammering down on people's self-esteem and everything, because people will shut down. So this is pretty true. Even for me, when talking to me, I do shut down when there's too much of an attack or negativity. And I think most people are like that in some way or another. So we would rather be told that we're doing something right, and then it makes us want to do things even more right, so that we get that good feeling that we get when people tell us or give us positive affirmations or feedback, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. So in chapter 2, because it's a very long book, I'm just going to boop, 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 boop. I won't even say the chapters. I'm just going to go through what I have, and the chapters will be in the notes. But the big secret in dealing with people is that we all have a desire for a feeling of importance that animals don't have. And that's kind of one of the things that separates us from animals. These desires are the cause of how society functions and has grown. So the feeling of wanting to be important is the thing that drives us as a human race. I don't know if that was the right verbiage, but that's the thing that drives us to build giant temples and pyramids and to be president and to take a leadership role and to take on more responsibility and to take on more work and to get healthy and strong and whatever. It's that desire for a feeling of importance. So it's a good thing to have that, because that's a driving force for humanity. So how you get your feeling of importance is what defines your character. So some people get their feeling of importance from being a murderer, and it makes them feel significant because they're causing a lot of pain to a lot of people. Whereas some people get their feeling of importance by helping other people, and that makes them feel good, and they are a valuable asset to those people that they're helping. And that's a positive way to get a feeling of importance, if you ask me. But that is one of the examples that is brought up in the podcast. So another quote that I wrote down is that you want to fear not the attack of an enemy, but the flattery of a friend. Appreciation is genuine, but flattery is not. So it's nice to express appreciation for people, especially in a genuine way. But when we try to flatter people to get our way, that's when it becomes a little insincere and manipulative. And to just seek out flattery too is also not necessarily the greatest quality. They do kind of talk about that in a little bit more detail in the book, but it has a lot to do with your character and so on and so forth. So, appreciation is a powerful thing. It's one of the most valuable human currencies, and studies have shown that the deterioration or success of a relationship greatly depends on how much appreciation is given. So a lot of times when people are disgruntled with one another as significant others or even parent to child, and the amount of cooperation that happens is based on one's feeling of appreciation. And when someone doesn't feel appreciated for a very, very long time, it does get to them, and it does cause the deterioration of the goodwill of the relationship. And I know that a lot of people probably experience that a lot in romantic relationships, when you feel like you do so much for your partner and they're not reciprocating and they're not expressing gratitude and they're not appreciative of that and they're not showing you or telling you that they appreciate you. It can get to you, make you feel very unloved, very unhappy, very unsatisfied. And so appreciation is very, very valuable and important. So be generous in appreciation and give honest, sincere appreciation. So if you feel appreciative of someone or something that someone's done for you, please say it. Don't just think it, because that verbal communication of that appreciation, that person wouldn't have known had you not said it, because we don't read each other's minds, and that might make their whole day, or that might make them more eager to do the thing that you appreciated for you time and time again. So I'm going to get into it in the next chapter, chapter 3. And I said I was going to say the chapters, but I think I'm going to say the chapters because I forgot that there are people listening to this that will not look at the notes. He who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot has a lonely way. That's the title of the chapter. And the reason why it says that is because in this chapter it explains very important ways of getting people to not only do what you want them to do, but see your point, or how basically you could get compliance. Like the example given here is a child and a parent, and how the parent is trying to get the child to want to do something, but the child isn't old enough to have the, I guess, obedience. So what the example was that there was a boy who did not want to start kindergarten, and he refused to comply. And instead of forcing him to go into it with a bad state of mind, because had the parent just said, shut up, go to kindergarten, the kid might have gone into kindergarten with a closed mind and a bad attitude. So instead of that happening, what the family did was they began finger painting, and the boy wanted to join, but the family said, oh no, you have to learn how to finger paint in kindergarten before you're allowed to try it with us. And because of that, the boy kind of reconsidered why he did or didn't want to go to kindergarten, and came to the conclusion that he actually did want to go to kindergarten. It did help that they also started to talk about all the other fun things that he would learn how to do in kindergarten. And so the result of that was that the next morning, the little boy was asleep at the front door ready to go because he didn't want to be late for kindergarten. What a change in attitude. That is a perfect example of how you can try to find a way for somebody to see the good or see your point of view without forcing it upon them. And that's one of the really important examples. There are so many. There are like hundreds of examples in this book that I can't get into, but I'm sure by that you could tell that you could see the value in doing that, because you could force people to do things, but it's definitely not going to be as good of a result, I think. So before you try to make somebody do something, think of how you can get them to want to do it. The only way to influence other people is to talk about what they want and tell them exactly how to get it. So it's bait the hook to catch the fish. When you are assessing situations, you want to try to assess the situation from the other person's point of view if it involves them, before trying to get them to do the things that you want to do your way, or the things that you find beneficial. And if you can find a way to communicate what you want, leading with how it will benefit them as well, you're more likely to be successful in this. And it's super important. There's nothing malicious about that. So if each party should gain from the situation, it's not self-serving and it's not manipulative. This is not a book about learning how to manipulate people for your own well-being and not theirs in any capacity. Because, the world is full of people who are grabbing and self-serving. They have the ability to, people who have the ability to put themselves in the position of others don't really need to worry about what the future has in store for them, because having goodwill towards mankind usually comes back to you in your favor. And so that's an important thing to have as a trait, as a human. And I'll tell you, that was not naturally ingrained in me whatsoever. If anything, I'm on the late train learning this one. There are a lot of concepts in this book that I feel that I personally have learned to apply over time navigating through life, but they're not anything that was instilled upon me in childhood. And that's why it's so important to read these books, because it really does open your mind up to just basically a lot of things that might be worth changing, even though you feel like you were just this way or just that way. If you're able to be open-minded, you could go a lot further in life. And that's a general statement, but it's true. And the things that you do succeed in, you can be even more successful in. In a nutshell, the fundamental techniques in handling people are: Principle 1, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Ears go off when people do that, right? When someone's criticizing you, condemning you, or complaining to you, your ears shut off. You don't really want to listen. That's normally the case. Principle 2, be of honest, sincere appreciation. Principle 3, arouse in the other person an eager want. So, man, my posture, I'm like slumped over like Quasimodo. I'm glad you can't see me in the audio podcast. Part 2, 6 ways to make people like you. We're just getting into it, the nitty gritty. Chapter 1, do this and you'll be welcomed anywhere. So, one example of someone who doesn't have to do anything for anyone to make a living is a dog, right? Their only job is to love you. We take care of them happily because they have no ulterior motives and the love is without condition. So we feel that their presence in our life is so valuable that we will pick up after them, we will provide for them, we will make sure they're healthy and happy, and we spend time with them and we let them live in our homes, and they literally bring nothing to the table. But that's because they bring everything to the table. The thing that's genuinely, truly important in life, they bring to the table, in my opinion. So they're invaluable. Imagine if people gave you, the people in your life gave you as much appreciation and love as your pet dog, right? That's a pipe dream. I don't know what pipe dream means, but it sounded appropriate to say right now. Well, you can make more friends in 2 months being genuinely interested in learning about other people than you can in 2 years trying to make people feel interested in learning more about you. So how many people do you know out there who just talk at you? And I've been guilty of this. This is something I'm newly changing. But how many people have you met who would just talk about themselves, and every time you bring something up, they revert the story back to themselves or the topic back to themselves, or every time you talk about an accomplishment or achievement or a worry, they talk about an accomplishment, an achievement, or a worry that they find parallel to yours without really listening to yours or even acknowledging yours? Yes, we've all been there. We've all talked to someone like this. Some of us might be married to someone like this. That ain't got nothing to do with me, though. You can basically communicate better with people if you listen to them and you are genuinely interested in what they're saying and not thinking about what you're going to say next. There will be a time and a place for that. And trying to talk about what you want to talk about rather than listening to what other people want to say, it doesn't really work well. It's not very effective because people are really genuinely just interested in themselves most of the time. But it is the individual who is not interested in his fellow men who has the greatest difficulties in life and provides the greatest injury to others. It is from among such individuals all human failures spring. And the reason why that sentence was so awkward was because that was a quote, and it was an old-timey quote, and it was hard to say. But I'm sure you picked up what I was putting down there. And we, as people, are interested in those who express interest in us. So if you're talking to someone, a sales clerk or whatever, or, a friend or an acquaintance, or you meet someone for the first time, and they're genuinely interested in you and they think you're so darn interesting, you're going to really love talking to them, and you're probably going to befriend them. Whereas when someone doesn't seem interested in you or what you have to say, and even worse, if they just talk about themselves, not much connection is made there. You know what I mean? So imagine doing that in business, making that mistake when you're trying to do business with someone and you just turn them off like that. So it's important to know if you don't care about your social life in any regard, at least in that aspect. Chapter 2, a simple way to make a good first impression. Your face matters. So don't do this. If you're listening to the podcast on audio version, I just did a face that was like slightly unpleasant. It could have been worse. I just didn't want to go there. But your face matters. The expression you have on your face makes a huge difference. And people who smile a lot, this is a fact. People who smile a lot raise happier kids. And we can, as humans, detect a false smile. So make it real. Make it genuine. Mean it. Work it. Why is my head bobbling so much? I should make bobbleheads. Anyways, maybe just one for myself. One for Nala. So, the effect of a smile is very powerful. Don't underestimate the power of a smile. I don't tell people to smile. That's really annoying. And if you're a woman, you know what this feels like. Men go around telling us to smile, but they don't tell each other to smile. I never see a man tell another man, "Hey bro, smile." It's always some dude who's like, thinks he's being suave or cute or something. And he's like, even an old man. And they tell a woman, "Hey, sweetheart, smile," or "Smile, darling." And guess what it does to us? it lights a fury inside of us where we feel like we never want to smile again in life, in public. Just for that 1 second. And then we go, you're funny, thanks, okay. Or we stay stone-faced. And we are then labeled the B word. You can't win. Anyways, that was a rant that had nothing to do with this. But there is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. That is a quote from William Shakespeare. But a smile is a sign of your goodwill. It does make you more approachable. It makes you more trustworthy. It makes you seem nicer. People don't want to talk to people they're scared of or find unapproachable. So smile, smile, though your heart is breaking. Smile, even when I don't know the words. Smile, all you gotta do is smile. Now I'm just making stuff up. Shoo-ba-doo-wop-dab-dab-doop. So, chapter 3 is, if you don't do this, you are headed for trouble. And guess what it is? Remembering people's names. It's so important to remember people's names when you want to make a good first impression. Or any impression at all, in any regard. I think it's one of the worst things you can do to meet someone multiple times and not remember their name. Especially in business. It's so inconsiderate. I get it. It's really hard to remember names because we're so concerned with saying our name that we're not listening to their name. And a lot of people, it sounds like the Charlie Brown parents or the whatever. It sounds like when people tell us their names, and I get that. But what I do, just as a tip, and this is a side note, is I do a word association. And so if someone tells me that their name is Crystal, in my head, I go, do you want crystal gel for your nail? Make you pretty like diamonds? Do you want crystal gel for your nail? And then guess who always remembers Crystal's name? This guy. And every time I tell people my name, just to help them out, I go, Jordan, like the shoe, like the slam dunk, like the river, like the country, Jordan. And I think that helps, but it's because I understand. We need word association. So that's how I do it. But who am I to say? And so it's remembering people's names makes them feel important, and it's one of the most powerful things you really can do. People really like hearing their own names. It makes them feel important, and that circles back to our feeling as humans of wanting to feel important and how important that really is. Chapter 4, an easy way to become a good conversationalist. Just be a good listener, encourage the other person that you're speaking to talk. Genuinely. How many times do we lead I know I do this, where I lead the conversation. It's just because I don't like quiet, awkward silences for the other person's sake, because for me, I'm not feeling awkward or uncomfortable in any sense. But for them, I'm like, oh, they must feel intimidated or put off or not know what to say or shy. So I'm going to talk so that fills that silence. But then, that doesn't give the other person the opportunity to talk. So I think that maybe that's not the right approach necessarily, but I mean well. So when you want to, and I got to work on this, but be a good listener. If you want to be a bore, interrupt people mid-sentence and talk about yourself without taking any interest in what they're saying or in them. A good conversationalist will pay attention to who they are talking to and what interests them and engage in conversation about the topic. This is something I really have to work on myself. So guilty, not the best at this. Talk in terms of the other person's interests. That's the thing. So that is something that I think it will really help you to get along with people, especially people that you don't necessarily know what to talk about with. Just talk about what they're interested in. And then eventually they might ask you about what you're interested in once they care about you and they're invested in you as a human. Because if they don't care about you and they're not invested in you as a human, they're not going to really want to know what you want to say, because they're like, just get out of my face so I can look at Instagram. Ugh, society. Chapter 6, how to make people like you instantly. Always make the other person feel important. Jesus summed it up, do unto others as you wish them to do unto you. I don't know if he said it exactly like that, but. So, principle 1 is become genuinely interested in other people. Principle 2, smile. Principle 3, remember that a person's name is the sweetest, most important sound to them. Principle 4, talk to people about themselves. Principle 5, talk to people about their interests and encourage them to do so. To talk about their interests, that is. Principle 6, make the other person feel important and listen sincerely. Part 3, how to win people to your way of thinking. Chapter 1 of this is you can't win an argument. You really can't, because our pride is strong. You might say, I got a lot of pride. But guess what, buddy boy? You're not the only one. We all do. All of us. You're a prideful son of a gun? Well, don't worry. So is everyone else. They might not be openly expressing it as much as you or wearing it as a badge of honor, but we all got a lot of pride. We all got egos. So we got to see what's worth it. What's worth it? Salvaging our own pride and ego, or making a friend, or working out a business deal, or getting business in itself so that we can live. I don't know. Pride's not that valuable to me. As long as I'm not disrespecting myself, I have no reason to be a proud human being, and I'm working on it. I'm working on really just slimming down that ego, baby. Slimming it down. So, why try to prove people wrong? It doesn't make them like you. When you try to prove people wrong, they opposite of like you, actually. They might be like, yeah, you're cool, you speak the truth, I respect you. But really, that's a big person right there. It's not the majority of the reaction that you'll get from trying to prove people wrong all the time. Like, think about this. How many people, and I used to be this guy when I was in middle school, okay? I was dumb. I was young. I was clueless. I was naive. Whatever. But I used to be the grammar police. I majored in English a long time ago, 10 years ago, since I last went to an English class, so don't judge me. And my notes are voice memos, so don't judge the spelling, but I used to be the grammar police. And guess how unappealing and gross it is to correct people? How much they hate it. How much of a douchebag you seem like when you do it. It's not something that you want to do. It's just not the nice thing to do. What do you get? A pat on the back because you taught somebody how to properly use your. There's two yours, and I said both of them, okay? The one with the apostrophe R-E and the one with the no E at the end. Okay, I said them both. They sound the same. Exactly. That's my point. Some people are not that grammar savvy. So when you go out and try to tell people, like, you're using the wrong your, you're using the wrong there, you're using the wrong the, you're just not even spelling this right. Your sentence made no sense. I used to be that person, okay? And sometimes it's insufferable. Sometimes someone's spelling is nauseating, okay? But keep it to yourself. Unless they ask you for help. If someone wants to say Kew, K-E-W or K-O-O, whatever, dude. Okay? Just keep it to yourself. Your distaste for that. Unless you're like trying to marry them and you think that it's a make or break, deal breaker, whatever for your relationship. But, if you're going to marry somebody that says Q, I'm just going to leave that there. I'm not even going to get into that. It's not polite to correct people, okay? Especially not in front of other people. That's the worst. And you can't win an argument, really, because if you win it, you lose. And if you lose it, you lose. So this is something that I'm newly learning, but it's really hard to change someone's mind because even if they know you're right, they're really going to stick to their guns because of their pride. And I've been guilty of this, especially in my younger years. But a man convinced against his will is of his original opinion still. Okay, Dr. Seuss. And that's true. You could try to force somebody to see your point of view, but really they're just going to be stubborn. And inside their own head, they're going to say, okay, agree to disagree. All right. But they're really closed off to what you're saying. They're not really changing their point of view. No man who is resolved to make the most of himself can spare time for personal contention. Still less can he afford to take the consequences. That was an old-timey quote from Abraham Lincoln. I didn't say that. It was awkward to say. So, how to keep a disagreement from turning into an argument would be to welcome the disagreement. When two partners always agree, one of them is not necessary. So disagreements are normal and it's okay to disagree. But be welcome to being corrected before you make a serious mistake. Our first natural reaction in a disagreeable situation is to be defensive. You're not going to get through to somebody who's being defensive. You're not going to have a good time talking to them. You're not going to enjoy the interaction. So keep calm and watch out for your first reaction, because things said in anger are usually regrettable. So it may be you at your worst and not your best if you can't control your temper. And remember, you can measure the size of a person by what makes him or her angry. So think about that person you dated that would get so angry at you for the smallest, most minuscule things and blow a top. Is that a thing? Do people say blow a top? Whatever. That's just a measurement of that person's character at the moment. We can all work on it. So, don't feel bad if someone blows the top. Is that the saying? I don't think that's the saying at you. Just kind of be like, oh, how unfortunate. Wow, that sounded kind of condescending. Maybe don't do that either. Just kind of be like, okay, well, I just can't control what you do, so I'm just going to do what I do. Listen first and give your opponent a chance to talk. Try to build bridges of understanding. Don't build higher barriers of misunderstanding. Hello? Look for areas of agreement. That's one way to build bridges of understanding. And apologize for your mistakes. It'll help disarm your opponents. That's pretty good. That's pretty good offense. I don't play sports, but I think offense is the right word to use in that context, in that situation. Promise to think over your opponent's ideas and study them carefully and mean it. Don't be FOS. That means full of it. Don't be FOS, full of it. Be sincere. Be real. Keep it real. Keep it real, G. I already had my peace sign out. That was awkward. There we go. So, promise not to... I did a peace sign, by the way, if you're listening to this. Sorry, awkward. I gotta explain to you guys who aren't watching because you're kind of visually impaired at the moment. But anyone who takes the time to disagree with you is interested in what you are saying and can become your friend. So... thank your opponent, because, if they care enough to disagree with you, that means they're listening to the point that you're trying to make, and they have an opinion about it. That's cool. Better than being nonchalant, I suppose, or melancholy, or that's all the words I have in my head right now. When two people yell, there's no communication, just noise and bad vibrations. So, principle 1, the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. Chapter 2, a sure way of making enemies and how to avoid it. Socrates once said, "The one thing I know is that I know nothing." And I don't know if that's the exact quote, but it's something like that. And the author suggests that you should read Benjamin Franklin's autobiography because it's one of the most fascinating books ever written about dealing with people, allegedly. I haven't read it yet. I don't know if I want to, okay? This book's already really boring, so if this guy is telling me to read it, I'm gonna maybe think about it for a while. I might need to take a break and read something more interesting in the interim. Something a little bit more modern. But it provides excellent suggestions on managing yourself and improving your personality as well as dealing with people. So maybe it's worth reading. Chapter 3, if you're wrong, admit it. So in this section, the author tells a story about a man who would walk his dog off leash. And I actually remember this example. I don't even have to read it, but basically the man knew that his dog enjoyed to run around and there was never anyone around on this path, and the man walked his dog often, and it was never a problem not to have the dog on the leash, even though wherever this takes place, it's illegal not to have your dog on a leash or with a muzzle on. So one day he gets caught by an officer, and the officer gets really upset and says that it's illegal and the dog could have killed a squirrel and the dog could have bit a kid and the dog could have done this and that, and says, I'm gonna have to give you a ticket if I catch you with your dog without a muzzle and a leash. So the man decides to start putting a muzzle on a leash on his dog, and the dog doesn't enjoy the walks and the dog doesn't like it, and so he gives in to letting the dog run free again. And sure enough, he runs into the police officer again. But instead of being defensive or trying to hide that he did anything wrong or disobeyed the law, he admits fault right away and says, "I'm sorry, officer. I know it was dangerous for me to let my dog off the leash without a muzzle, but he really, really doesn't like it. I realized that he could have attacked a squirrel, and I totally accept and understand the fact that I need to get a ticket right now because I have broken the law." And the officer then says to him, yeah, no big deal. Just go ahead and run over the hill, and if I can't see your dog, I don't think it's going to hurt anybody or it's a problem. And the reason the author believes that the officer changed his tune was because he wanted that feeling of importance we talk about. And since the ability to reprimand the man was now taken from him, and the punishment was already accepted by the man, by being graceful, the officer now felt again like he regained a position of importance because he had the power to grant the guy freedom or a ticket, and he chose freedom since the man already accepted the fate of receiving a ticket. So it's really important in how you react to people, and you know, when in a situation where there's going to be potential conflict, so on and so forth. So when we are wrong, let's admit our wrongs quickly and with enthusiasm. And I lost the rest of my notes for some reason. Never mind. So I got them. But in chapter 4, the author talks about how gentleness and friendliness are always stronger than fury and force. And this other example of that is when the sun and the wind were at war with one another about who had more power. And so the sun and the wind saw a man walking with a coat, and the wind said, "I can get that man to take his coat off in seconds, watch." And so he starts blowing the winds of fury at the man, and every time the wind blows stronger and stronger, the man holds onto his coat tighter and tighter, doing the opposite of what he wanted to do, which was to get the man to take his coat off. So then the sun comes around and gives it a go with a nice warm shine and smile, I guess, theoretically. And the man, within seconds, takes off his coat in the warmth of the sun. And so it's just more effective to be friendly and gentle and warm rather than mean and furious and with force try to get people to be on your side or see or do things that you want them to do or so on and so forth. So, man, you guys really got to check out this book, though, for all the examples, because there are so many. And I know I'm missing a lot of information, and I know that I feel like I already said a lot, and I'm so thirsty from talking, but that's another issue. So, you know, another thing that you want to do is you want to have people saying yes rather than no, because once people start saying no to you, it's kind of locked in that they want to continue to be disagreeable. Whereas when you can come from an angle of seeing their point of view and speaking with undeniable facts that are not biased per se, the person will start to agree with you, and then they'll want to continue to agree with you. So you want to get that going, and you want to let the person feel like the idea is his or hers when you're trying to sway somebody to do something that you want to do. But if it's beneficial to them, of course, they're not going to choose not to do it. So you just want to help them to see how it's beneficial to them so that they can think that it's their idea, and then their pride is still intact. So this book, I guess, makes a lot of assumptions that people let their pride and egos run them and are not going to read this book and be open-minded, which is fine. Because it's not really our job to tell people what to read or what to do. It's not my job. It's my job to decide how I conduct myself in the world, and that's why I read these books. And I'm just sharing with you what I read because I find these things valuable. These are gold nuggets, and they help. So really, you want to appeal to noble motives. You want to try to be noble and in good conscience. Just do the right thing. But it's okay the way that you communicate that to other people is really important. And when you're trying to get people to be interested in what you're saying, dramatization and showmanship when presenting your ideas will get that attention, and people will listen to you. So you don't want to be like, hey, imagine I started reading this podcast like this and I didn't have any emotion or enthusiasm, and I was basically just reading the points like that. Like, how bored are you listening to that? So you want to have a little bit of enthusiasm and showmanship, And I remember when I was a trainer, when I was training boot camps, I was all about the show. Hey, baby. I was all about the show. I was doing cartwheels. I can't do cartwheels, so I was like doing front roll flips and running around and jumping and making little jokes, and it was kind of annoying. But if you're working out at 5 a.m. and you're bored of doing your workout or you're in pain, it's nice to have a little jester running around like, it's more entertaining than someone walking around going, good job, push yourself, yes. Like, that's not very motivating. You want somebody who's like running around like, hey girl, killing it, dang, you're gonna look good for your vacation, ooh, ooh. You know, that's just more interesting, I think. So what do I know? So when you basically, you know, want people to want to listen to you, just do that. So the rest of the book kind of goes into how to not be critical, or how to criticize without being hated. It's so important that you are positive in your approach, and that you don't make people feel attacked. And I'm just going to stop there as far as just talking about this book. I hope my audio recording is still working. Yes! We're going to end here. I've decided that I'm at 45 minutes, that's my standard average time, because I don't want this to be too long. But I hope that you liked that book and that you're interested in reading it. I am not sure exactly what book I'm going to read next, but they are going to be either some type of books that helps you to think more about things objectively. We can call them self-help books, motivational books, biographies, things that we can learn lessons from and that contain gold nuggets. So I had a hiccup right now. We're just going to wrap it up there. And thank you guys so much for watching. You can like and comment on this podcast I don't think you can comment or rate it on iTunes, and I can't figure that out. But if you can, please rate and comment on it on iTunes. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and comment on this video and continue to watch this. And if you think it's horrible and you just can't even watch it because it's something about it just sucks or whatever, please comment down below how I can make it better. I've never done anything like this, so this is kind of new to me. I'm figuring it out as I go. I just decided I was going to release an imperfect project rather than waiting for it to be perfect, because otherwise it would never get done. So please let me know. I'm open to your feedback. I'm open to your suggestions and books. I do have about 15 books in my head that I want to go through already, but please feel free to recommend anything. And I hope you have a great week, because this can be your Monday motivation. These podcasts will go up every Monday. Make sure that you check in every Monday for a new episode. I am working on stickers and other things, so I'll be back with more on that next time. But I appreciate your viewership. What am I, a PBS commercial? My back hurts. Okay, I'm gonna go now. Now I'm just complaining. That's weird. That just contradicted everything I just read. See? That's what happens when you get thirsty and hangry. All right. I'm Matthew McConaughey. You got Matthew McConaughey on your podcast? All right. Yeah, I did. He was hiking, and I was like, hey, Matthew McConaughey, would you mind saying all right on my podcast? And he was like, all right. Anyways, that's not a true story. I'm fibbing now. Okay, bye. Thanks for listening.